My husband went bungee jumping, but he fell from 100 meters up and was smashed to a pulp when I got the call from the hospital and rushed over. All that was left was a body covered with a white sheet. Overwhelmed with grief, I cried until I convulsed and passed out, causing me to miscarry my unborn child on the spot. When I woke up, he had already been cremated into a jar of ashes. At that very moment, the company's business partners stormed into my hospital room, demanding hundreds of millions in breach of contract penalties. That's when I found out I was the sole heir to his estate. To pay off the debt, I went abroad to work odd jobs, often going hungry, yet I ended up seeing photos of his tropical island wedding with his first love right outside a wedding planning company. I got hired as a cleaner to sneak onto the cruise ship, then charged straight at them to demand answers. I was thrown overboard on the spot, my body lost to the sea. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day my husband faked his death. Ms. Lin, I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen was pronounced dead at the scene. We never had a chance to administer first aid. Please accept our deepest condolences. Dr. Zhang Chang, Chen Hui's attending physician, let out a long sigh, his face etched with regret. He looked utterly helpless and unwilling to accept the situation. In my past life, I had taken his words at face value. It wasn't until I saw him at the wedding that I discovered he was the biological brother of my husband's first love, Zhang Qian. He reached out and patted my shoulder in a comforting gesture. We won't let you see the body. There isn't a single patch of intact skin left. The entire person was pulverized. We'll proceed directly to cremation. My gaze vacant, I slid slowly down the wall, then crouched on the floor, hugging my knees as I grappled with the reality of my rebirth. In my previous life, I received a call from the hospital. I dropped the housework I was doing and ran all the way there, but I still didn't make it in time to see Chen Hui one last time. My hands trembled as they clutched the death certificate. Overwhelmed by grief, I fainted on the spot, and the child I was carrying was lost. When I woke up, there was an urn by my hospital bed. Before I could even grieve, a group of the company's partners stormed into the ward and dragged me off to notarize the inheritance. I signed and stamped my fingerprint like a puppet. When it was over, I was informed I was now saddled with hundreds of millions in breach of contract penalties. The company's funds vanished without a trace, leaving it a hollow shell and forcing it to shut down. Our family home was also seized by debt collectors and sold at auction. When I tried to contact my mother-in-law, Lu Ping, I found my number blocked. She was nowhere to be seen throughout my husband's funeral. To repay the debts, I had to go abroad to work odd jobs. Right after suffering a miscarriage, I survived each day on nothing but survival biscuits. If I hadn't seen the promotional photos for Chen Hui and Zhang Qian's wedding of the century outside the event company, I would have gone to my grave none the wiser. I finally managed to get on board the cruise ship by landing a job as a cleaner, and on their wedding day, I rushed up to confront them. I ended up being dragged away by security, tied up, and locked in the ship's hold. After the wedding, Chen Hui stood before me, sneering and calling me a useless old hen who couldn't even keep her eggs. To prove his loyalty to Zhang Qian, he personally threw me into the sea. In the end, I was devoured by fish, leaving not a trace of my body behind. At this memory, my hands clenched my pant legs in a death grip, my eyes burning with pure hatred. If he wants to put on a show, I'll make sure he gets a taste of the real thing. I pulled myself out of the memories of my past life. Zhang Chang, however, kept trying to console me, describing in detail the gruesome circumstances of Chen Hui's death. It was as if he wouldn't be satisfied until I cried myself into a faint. Seeing that I remained unmoved, he broke into a nervous sweat and pulled out the bottle of water he had prepared in advance. Indiana, my past life, drowned in grief. I hadn't noticed, but now, looking closely, I could see the residue of a dissolved pill in the water. No wonder in my past life, I had only wept a little before being seized by agonizing abdominal cramps, a pain worse than death. So it was his doing, his drugging, that caused me to miscarry on the spot. Chen Hui really is ruthless. If he dares to make the first move, why should I hold back from making the second? I steadied myself and brushed the man's hand off my shoulder. Taking a deep breath, I said, my husband died a horrible death in that amusement park. The park management is entirely responsible. I can't just swallow this injustice. We must call the police. The cremation can wait. The priority is to let the police examine the injuries first. Zhang Chang's eyes widened instantly, his hand freezing in midair as he offered the water. Miss Lin, please don't be rash. The most important thing right now is to let Mr. Chen rest in peace. Remembering the unbearable agony of the medical abortion in my past life, I shook my head firmly. My husband was always in perfect health. He walked into that amusement park full of life, and was carried out broken beyond recognition. I refuse to believe their equipment wasn't faulty. I will make those unscrupulous merchants rot in prison and pay with their lives for what they did to my husband. Zhang Cheng was so frantic that cold sweat soaked through his white lab coat. He stammered, "Mr. Chen is gone, and nothing can bring him back. If you want revenge, at least wait until after the cremation. It's not like the amusement park, with all its land, is going anywhere." Hearing this, my expression instantly turned to ice. You make a good point, an amusement park that big, operating for so many years, how could their equipment possibly fail? Hearing me say that, he was just about to let out a sigh of relief when I spoke again. My voice was tight with suppressed anger. A grown man wouldn't go bungee jumping alone. He must have had someone with him. So why is he the only one left after the accident? It's possible the person with him tampered with the equipment when my husband had his accident. It's not too late to call the police. If we wait until after the cremation, the killer could be halfway across the world. Zhang Cheng blurted out anxiously, "No, no, no." He stammered for a long moment, unable to get another word out. As I dialed to call the police, he made several aborted attempts to snatch the phone from my hand. In the end, he was deterred each time by my icy glare. After an internal struggle, he slunk over to a corner and sent a few messages. The police arrived at the hospital shortly after receiving the call. I quickly put on a look of utter fury, grabbed the newcomer by the wrist, and demanded the truth for Chen Hui. My husband has always been in perfect health, with no heart condition whatsoever. If there wasn't a problem with the amusement park ride, then someone must have tampered with it. He died so horribly. As his wife, I must get justice for him. The police officer comfortingly clasped my hand in return and spoke with firm conviction. "Please, try to stay calm. We dispatched officers to that amusement park the moment we got the call. We understand how you must be feeling, but please don't panic." After saying this, he released my hand and prepared to enter to examine the injuries. Zhang Cheng lunged forward in a single stride, blocking the doorway. "No, you can't move him. The deceased is gone. Can't you even grant him his final piece?" My face was a mask of disapproval as I snapped, "You're just a hospital doctor. I'm calling the police to investigate the truth behind my husband's death. What right do you have to stop me?" He was panting with agitation, stammering and unable to form a complete sentence. "Mr. Chen's condition is severe. I really don't want to traumatize you. What's done is done. What good will seeing his body do? I've seen too many family members at the hospital develop psychological issues after viewing a loved one's remains. Some have been on medication for years, struggling with insomnia. I'm stopping you for your own good." The police officer's expression darkened at the words. "If the next of kin makes this request, the hospital has no right to refuse. It's her choice. Please do not interfere with our investigation." I nodded in agreement. "Even if it means a lifetime of insomnia and trauma, I will see my husband off without letting him leave with any regrets. If anyone dares to harm him, I'll make them pay with their blood, even if it costs me my life." The police pulled Zhang Cheng aside and then entered the room to gather the tools for the autopsy. As the cloth stained with a dark red hue was about to be lifted, Zhang Cheng cried out in desperation, "Stop. I've already notified the deceased's family. A matter this significant is not for you to decide alone." As soon as she finished speaking, my mother-in-law, Lu Ping, arrived on the scene wearing slippers and with a dried, unwashed face mask still on. She charged straight at me and slapped me hard across the face. The force of the blow nearly sent me to the floor, and I had to grab the wall beside me to steady myself. "How dare you not tell me my son is dead, and you had the nerve to arrange an autopsy behind my back? Who the hell do you think you are? I won't be satisfied until I've skinned you alive today." The truth is, I never had any intention of performing an autopsy on him. Once the sheet covering the body is removed, it would reveal the fact that Chen Hui has no wounds on him. My entire plan from here on out would be ruined. Everything I'm doing now is just to force her to show herself. After all, a grand spectacle loses more than half its appeal without a heartbroken audience. Hearing from someone else that your son has been cremated is a world away from witnessing him burn to death with your own eyes. The police officer, holding a tool in hand, froze mid-action. Only then did Zhang Cheng let out a sigh of relief, raising his arm to wipe the sweat from his brow. My eyes welled up with tears instantly. "Mom, I tried to reach you, but you blocked me, didn't you? I don't know what I did to upset you. You blocking me is one thing, but my husband might have been murdered. I just want justice for him. Are you really going to stand by and let his killer get away with it?" Lu Ping's face contorted with rage. The face mask she was wearing cracked and fell to the floor as her expression twisted in fury. She shot me a venomous glare, then turned to the police and said, "I am the victim's mother. I will not file a report, and I forbid you from touching my son's body. Get out of here, now, or I'll report you to your superiors." The police officers exchanged uneasy glances, holding back tears with reddened eyes. I said plaintively, I'm sorry for wasting your time. My mother-in-law hasn't been well, mentally. She probably just can't process the news of my husband's death. But as Chen Hui's wife, I can't just let the killer get away with this. Proceed with the autopsy. Once the investigation results from the amusement park come in and we can identify the suspect using the surveillance footage, my mother-in-law will understand why I had to do this. Lu Ping never expected that I, who had always been so docile, would stand my ground so firmly today. She was so enraged on the spot that she was left speechless, clutching her chest and breathing heavily. Once she recovered, she rolled up her sleeves, charged right up to me, and started slapping me wildly from both sides. You bitch, my son is already dead, lying right there, and you still won't leave him alone. All you want is the compensation money, isn't it? I knew all along you were no good. For all I know, it was that lover of yours on the outside who killed my son. As long as I'm here today, you won't get a single cent. Get the police out of here right now, or I'll jump off the hospital roof this instant. She clamped both hands around my neck with a death grip. The police officers inside, preparing for the autopsy, were stunned by the sudden commotion and rushed out to restrain her. Gasping for air with a hand on my chest, I spoke through sobs. I told you my mother-in-law probably couldn't handle the shock. If my lover really did this, why would I have called the police in the first place? Please, perform the autopsy now. As soon as he finished speaking, the police officer's walkie-talkie crackled to life. We've retrieved the surveillance footage from the amusement park, but the aerial shots are unclear. We can only make out that he was with a woman. Her identity is still under investigation. Upon hearing this, the old woman slapped her thigh and burst into tears. Seizing the moment while the police were flustered, she suddenly broke free and made a dash for the window. She yelled at me furiously, Lin Hui, call off your report to the police right now. Let me take my son to be cremated, or I'll jump off this building right now. If my son is dead, I don't want to live either. Pretending to be panicked and without turning my head, I pleaded, okay, I won't let them perform the autopsy. Alright, Mom, please don't do this, I'm begging you. The experienced police officer nearby seized the moment as she relaxed, lunging forward in a single stride to restrain her. After thanking the police, I asked them to look after my mother-in-law for me. I then called the crematorium myself. Zhang Cheng rushed over, his face pale with panic, trying to stop me. I said coldly, I've already agreed not to call the police, just as my mother-in-law wished. Now I'm only trying to have my husband cremated. What's your problem with that? Seeing the stern look on my face, his hand dropped limply to his side. While I was on the phone making the appointment, he slipped away to the end of the corridor to tip off his sister. I watched his actions, feeling nothing but scorn and cold contempt in my heart. By the time the car pulled up at the hospital, my mother-in-law had already been confined to a room for observation. Her distraught screams echoed throughout the entire corridor. A psychiatrist from the hospital walked in quickly, holding a sedative. Soon, the old woman fell silent. Zhang Cheng rushed forward to block the crematorium workers, only to be forcibly pulled away by the police. His eyes were wide with pure hatred. He must be regretting drugging Chen Hui into unconsciousness by now, but it's too late for regrets. On the way, I lifted a corner of the red cloth and saw Chen Hui's face, his brow furrowed tightly. I remembered how, in my past life, he held Zhang Qian, his face twisted with disgust and contempt for me. He even cursed my dead child with his own mouth. The savage glee of vengeance consumed my reason. I wished for nothing more than to personally shove him into the incinerator. I knew he could hear me, so I leaned down close to his ear and whispered, Did you think I was unaware of your little scheme? As your wife, how could I not lend a hand? You'll be the first to be pushed into the furnace alive. Tell me, will your mistress die with you, or will she take your money and run? A clear liquid welled in the corner of his eye. I reached out, pressed my thumb hard against his eyeball, and pushed until it gave way, sinking into the socket. Save your tears, you'll have plenty of chances to cry your eyes out later. The car pulled up to the funeral home entrance, only to be blocked by a Maybach. Zhang Qian stepped out of the car in her high heels, her makeup flawless but her eyes burning with anger. She helped her sedated mother-in-law out from the back seat. The moment the old woman's feet touched the ground, her legs gave way beneath her, yet she kept on cursing, Lin Hui, you bitch, give me back my son. I signaled for the staff to carry Chen Hui inside first, then sent a message on my phone to the police officer I had just added. Only then did I get out of the car and step forward to block the path of the two furious individuals. Zhang Qian was supporting her mother-in-law, her eyes fixed on me with pure hatred. Your husband's body is barely cold, and you've already had your own mother-in-law locked up in the hospital. What kind of monster are you? I think you're the one who killed Chen Hui. You're just after his inheritance and the insurance money. With tears welling in my eyes, I spoke through sobs. I'll walk away with nothing, not a single penny, but I'm his wife. I have to be the one to see him off. I wouldn't trust anyone else with it. I just have doubts about how he really died and want the police to look into it. What possible ill intent could I have? Well, that works out perfectly. Now Mom can see her son off in person today. With that, I turned and went straight inside. Zhang Qian hurried to follow, but with her mother-in-law as dead weight, she couldn't run fast at all. In the end, she simply abandoned the old woman. When I entered, Chen Hui had just been pushed into the cremation furnace. I stood outside, my gaze dark and inscrutable. As the heavy door was about to slam shut, she rushed forward, shoving me aside and placing herself in front of me. Get away. I won't let you lay a finger on Ah Hui. Covering my mouth, I feigned a look of overwhelming grief and spoke to the bewildered staff member beside me. Proceed, ignore her. She has nothing to do with my husband. The words were barely out of her mouth when Zhang Qian slapped me across the face. I said no, and that's final. Ah Hui wanted to divorce you a long time ago. You don't deserve to be the one to cremate him. His mother is right outside, and she doesn't acknowledge you as her daughter-in-law either. Hearing this, the staff members' hands hesitated in their task, ignoring the stinging pain on my face. I immediately sprinted to the control panel, determined to do it myself. At that moment, my mother-in-law burst in, carried on the back of Zhang Chang, who had finally arrived. Stop, get out of here. Don't you dare touch my son. Without hesitation, I raised my hand and pressed the incinerator's start button. Zhang Qian instantly rushed over, shoved me to the ground with force, and began kicking and punching my torso. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen, and a gush of blood welled up beneath me. At the same moment, Chen Hui in the furnace abruptly sat up. Flames instantly erupted and engulfed his figure. 5. Zhang Cheng rushed forward immediately to try and stop it, but was promptly pulled back by the staff. Once the device is activated, it won't stop until it's reduced him to ashes. My condolences to the family. The mother-in-law collapsed weakly to the floor, pounding her hands against it in despair. What a tragedy. What kind of daughter-in-law have I got? She's gone and killed my son with her own hands. In a fit of rage, she kept pounding her chest. Her eyes swept over my pained expression, and she scrambled up from the floor, rushing towards me just as she was about to lay a hand on me. The police burst through the front door. Seeing this, I quickly pulled my mother-in-law away. The mother-in-law, furious, immediately started screaming, "It's this bitch who killed my son. Aren't you the police? Why aren't you arresting her? You're in cahoots with her." I was pinned to the ground, with Zhang Qian sitting on top of me, unable to move. Gritting my teeth against the searing pain, I said coldly, "Your son died on his own. There's a hospital report. Are you saying the hospital killed him, or that they deliberately let a living person burn to death without lifting a finger?" As soon as I finished speaking, a flicker of panic crossed the faces of Zhang Qian and Zhang Chang. My mother-in-law fell silent under my questioning. Only then did the police follow my voice and notice Zhang Qian on top of me. They immediately recognized her as the woman seen with Chen Hui in the amusement park surveillance footage. Just as they were about to take her away for questioning, my mother-in-law urgently spoke up to stop them, pointing a finger at me on the ground. "That woman is not my daughter-in-law. She's the real murderer. She was after my son's inheritance. The one you should arrest is Lin Hui." I tried to speak in my defense, but Zhang Qian pressed down hard on my chest. The severe lack of oxygen, combined with the searing pain in my abdomen, made everything go black as I passed out. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital room. We lost the baby after all. I stared blankly at the 4 drip, listening to the monotonous plink-plunk of the fluid. I couldn't help but start to think, I suppose it was just meant to be. A scumbag like Chen Hui doesn't deserve to have children of his own. Tears welled in the corners of her eyes as a fierce argument suddenly erupted outside. It was unfolding exactly as it had in her past life. The group of partners demanding penalty payments had tracked her down to the hospital. The only difference this time was that the police were stationed right outside the hospital room door. They couldn't get in. After a moment's thought, I mustered my strength and, despite my weakness, told them to let the creditors in. The moment the door opened, a crowd of people barged in without a word, holding contracts with the penalty clause amount circled. They just dumped it on me and demanded I pay for it. I picked up a contract that was on me and examined it carefully. In my past life, I never got the chance to investigate it thoroughly. Now, thinking back on all the details of the whole affair, I'm filled with suspicion. In a properly run company, even if the person in charge runs into trouble, the rest of the team should be able to carry on as usual. How could things have gotten so bad that the company went bankrupt? After reading the delivery deadlines in the contract, it finally dawned on me. Chen Hui's company going bankrupt and defaulting on its contracts was a premeditated scheme all along. The delivery schedule outlined in this contract is impossibly tight. There's no way to meet it, and to think Chen Hui signed contracts with 4 different companies for the same batch of goods. It was blatantly obvious he was just trying to make a quick buck and skip town by any means necessary. With the police present, the creditors didn't dare get physical. They could only hurl a constant stream of abuse, demanding I pay up. I let out a cold, scornful laugh. Chen Hui and I signed our divorce papers a month ago. I have no claim to his assets, and his debts are absolutely none of my concern. You can't pin this on me. The business partners exchanged a glance, then immediately began shouting curses at my hospital bed. Are you fucking kidding us? What kind of joke is this? If you're not responsible for his debts, who the hell are we supposed to get our money from? The afterlife. My calm gaze met the eyes of the one who had spoken. I reminded them, I divorced him because I found out he was cheating. He never gave a single penny to the household, yet he showered his mistress with gold and jewels. That very mistress has been arrested today on suspicion of murder. If you're looking for him, you can go straight to the police station. At the mention of police station, they all fell silent, their spirits completely deflated. But the penalty for breach of contract was no small sum. After a long discussion in the hospital corridor, the group finally decided to head to the police station to look for him. To my shock, the moment I stepped into the police station, my furious mother-in-law berated me until I was forced to leave. After dark, seizing the moment when the officer went to the restroom, she barged into the hospital room and dragged me out as if replaying a past life. Your mother-in-law says you never even got divorced. Are you fucking messing with me? With that, he grabbed a fistful of my hair. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I struggled and managed to say, the divorce papers are at my place. If you don't believe me, come with me to get them. I'll take you there right now. After a long drive, the car finally came to a stop at the front door. The moment I stepped out, I saw my mother-in-law furtively tapping at the keypad of the door lock. In an instant, I remembered the insurance policy in the drawer. A chill ran through me. They're determined to squeeze every last drop of benefit from Chen Hui's fake death, leaving me with nothing but crushing debt. I thought with her own son just dead, she might lay low for a couple of days. I guess I underestimated just how mercenary she is. Well, if that's how it is, why should I hold back? Hearing my footsteps, my mother-in-law turned her head. Her guilty look instantly ignited into fury the moment she saw my face. She bared her teeth and started shouting, you ungrateful wretch. Now that my son's company is failing and he's in debt, you claim you're divorced. When he was alive, you were crying and begging not to leave him. A beast like you was never fit to be my daughter-in-law. I sneered and said, you didn't know your son signed the divorce papers a month ago, did you? It's just that I was pregnant at the time, so I kept putting off signing. Looking back now, perhaps that's exactly why he came up with an even more malicious plan. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law instantly averted her eyes. She was clearly in the know. I ignored her, walking right past to punch in the door code. The moment the door opened, she darted inside, using a stomachache as an excuse. She went upstairs to find the bathroom, but I knew she was just going to get that insurance policy. Chen Hui had planned his fake death. He must have made arrangements for what came next. And even my mother-in-law knew exactly where the insurance policy was hidden. I had just opened my mouth to call out to them when several business partners snapped at me, accusing me of wasting their time. Under the weight of their threatening glares, I walked to the coffee table and pulled the divorce papers from the drawer. The moment I had them in my hand, they were snatched away by someone behind me. The agreement was clutched tightly in the mother-in-law's hand, with only a corner bearing Chen Hui's signature peeking out. The next second, she tore it all to shreds and flung the pieces into the air. Looking at the confetti of paper littering the floor, a look of relief finally washed over the mother-in-law's face. All I could do was sneer. She thought I was just saying we were divorced to dodge the debt, but I never had any intention of making the divorce with Chen Hui official in the first place. Otherwise, on what grounds could I sue to recover the assets he transferred to Zhang Qian during our marriage? I watched her movements with an icy stare. My mother-in-law avoided my gaze, but cursed, don't you dare forge my son's signature here. You think a fake agreement will get you off the hook? Not a chance. With that, she turned and walked out, taking the policy with her. She left a room full of bewildered business partners staring at each other. I repeatedly promised them a proper resolution, talking until I was hoarse before people finally began to disperse from the room. I dragged my exhausted body back to the hospital. The hallway was already packed with police officers. Seeing I was unharmed, they all breathed a sigh of relief. The person in charge spoke up. I'll arrange for rotating shifts to stand guard later, so they don't come looking for us again. Hearing this, I shook my head and declined his offer. Now it's my turn to take the initiative. As soon as my condition stabilized, I checked myself out of the hospital and immediately called the insurance company. I confirmed that my mother-in-law had collected all the compensation and transferred the funds to Zhang Qian's account. Only then did I begin the process of finding a lawyer to file a lawsuit. On the very day the lawyer's letter arrived, my mother-in-law showed up with a parade of bizarre relatives and smashed the front door to pieces. They tore into me with a torrent of abuse. Nothing in the house was left untouched. The once cozy room was left in complete disarray. Clutching my lower abdomen, my eyes filled with scorn, I called the police and spoke in a cold voice. Go ahead and smash it. It was all bought with your son's hard-earned money. These are all your son's belongings now. My mother-in-law froze, her eyes blazing red with fury. You're the one who killed my son. I'll make you pay with your life. You'll join my son in the grave. The police arrived at the house just then and took the whole group in for questioning. The room was finally quiet. I spent the night in a hotel room. After giving her statement, my mother-in-law called me countless times. I ignored every call and, finally fed up, blocked her number. When the court convened the next day, Zhang Qian, the defendant, failed to show up. During the 2 weeks I was hospitalized, she had sold Chen Hui's company at a rock-bottom price and declared it bankrupt. It was only then that I discovered she was the company's legal representative in name. She had completely drained the company of its last remaining value. Yet, when those business partners come to collect debts, they only ever come after me. Chen Hui's death had no impact whatsoever on Zhang Qian. She's been living the high life with the money from selling the company, getting facials, perming her hair, and is even more comfortable now than before. Zhang Cheng also resigned from the hospital after the incident. The two of them rented a luxurious villa in the suburbs. Back in the city, only my mother-in-law remained, still causing trouble with me over Chen Hui's death. The absurd thing was, seeing the empty seats now, a triumphant smile still spread across her face. I watched it all, unable to suppress the scorn in my heart. She still hasn't seen through Zhang Qian's true nature. Little does she know, she's the real clown in all this. The mother-in-law looked down at her phone, her fingers scrolling across the screen. The expression on her face shifted from initial joy to confusion, and finally to anger and despair. Something finally felt off. She was just a pawn in Zhang Qian's game. Unable to reach Zhang Qian by phone, she turned to contacting her brother instead. To her dismay, Zhang Cheng's number was also disconnected. My mother-in-law finally began to panic. I sat calmly in the chair opposite, watching her features twist with anxiety. A vindictive pleasure spread unchecked through my heart. After a long while, the calls she made still went unanswered. In a frantic sweat, they decided to call the police. As soon as the call connected and they explained the situation, the police informed them that they had already been tracking Zhang Qian's movements since early that morning. Furthermore, they had just received an update. Zhang Qian and the other person had been intercepted at the airport and were now on their way back. Hearing this, the mother-in-law finally breathed a sigh of relief. As soon as Zhang Qian appeared in the courtroom, the mother-in-law immediately stood up, rushed over to her, and began questioning her in a low voice. The arm that landed on Zhang Qian's shoulder was coldly shrugged off. All the pent-up frustration and anger the mother-in-law had been holding back instantly erupted just as she was about to make a move. Zhang Cheng saw right through her and shoved her aside. Get lost, you old hag, stay out of my way. Staring at his terrifying, menacing expression, the old woman froze on the spot. She was stunned for a long moment. I can't understand why a comrade from the same side would suddenly turn on me now. Under Zhang Cheng's protection, Zhang Qian walked to the defendant's seat. Despite being the one accused, she held her chin high, looking at me with an expression of absolute confidence. Don't think calling the police and having me brought back will do any good. It's already too late. How dare a cast-off slut like you try to compete with me? A scornful smirk curled at the corner of her lips. The mother-in-law's face turned ashen. She muttered in a daze, what does this mean? Have my son and I been played for fools? It can't be. Absolutely impossible. Zhang Qian is clearly carrying my grandson. Zhang Cheng, standing right beside her, immediately spat on her upon hearing this. Shut up. That dead man isn't worthy of anything. What a joke. Qian could toy with him as easily as playing with a dog, carrying his child. Preposterous. Upon hearing those words, the last glimmer of light in the old woman's eyes instantly died out. Stunned and rooted to the spot by the sudden turn of events, she fumbled with trembling hands, pulled a medicine bottle from her bosom, and gulped it down. Zhang Qian glanced down at the amount I demanded she repay and couldn't help but laugh. Lin Hui. When you married Chen Hui, you were daydreaming that he loved you. Now that he's dumped you, you still haven't kicked the habit. 100 million, why don't you just go rob a bank? What proof do you have? Just making wild accusations. I could sue you for extortion. Looking at her contemptuous gaze, I let out a cold laugh and began to speak. When Chen Hui transferred that money to you, we hadn't even signed the divorce papers. Besides, I never signed that agreement. Any assets he transferred to you during our marriage were our joint property. Now that he's dead, that property is part of the estate I inherit personally. So tell me, Don't I have every right to get it back? To my surprise, her face twisted into a look of utter contempt. Your husband sent me money. I have a boyfriend. Why on earth would I need his money? A man I dumped a decade ago. I didn't want him when he was single. You think I'd want him after he got married? Only someone like you, picking up other people's leftovers, would treat him like some kind of treasure. I followed her suggestive gaze and saw Zhang Chang sitting in the audience. She let out a soft, sudden chuckle. If Chen Hui saw this, he'd probably be so furious he'd come back from the dead just to slap her twice at the mention of the words boyfriend. The mother-in-law's dazed eyes slowly lifted, the realization hit, and she immediately began to curse. You bitch, what did you just say? Isn't he your own brother? Have you been lying to me? This whole time, Zhang Qian let out a light, scornful laugh. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't just spout nonsense. I'm not married. What's wrong with dating? It's none of your damn business. Halfway in the grave and you still want to meddle in your son's ex-girlfriend's life. Wake up, your son is already 6 feet under. At that moment, her entire demeanor was a stark contrast to the meek and submissive person she had been before. I watched it all unfold, my heart filled with bitter irony. So this is the first love for whom Chen Hui was willing to fake his own death and elope. In the previous life, Zhang Chang's true identity was never exposed, likely because Chen Hui still had used to them at that time. He could still make money for that despicable pair. Now that they have squeezed the last bit of value out of Chen Hui, the two of them no longer have any need to hide. The mother-in-law was so enraged she could barely breathe, nearly fainting on the spot. Zhang Qian sneered coldly, stop the act. If you want to join your son, you can just jump off a building. I'm not your idiot daughter-in-law. I wouldn't even glance your way if you died. That prenatal report I showed you before, that's my boyfriend's child. Your son isn't even worthy. The moment the words left her mouth, the mother-in-law completely lost consciousness and collapsed to the floor. The staff nearby were terrified and hastily called an ambulance to have him taken away. Zhang Qian watched it all with an impatient look on her face. Hurry up, she said. If you can't produce the evidence, I have things to do. I have a flight to catch for my honeymoon abroad. She was absolutely certain I couldn't produce the evidence of Chen Hui's money transfer because Chen Hui treated her so incredibly well, while I, as his wife, didn't even have the right to touch his phone. The very next moment, I pulled the printed bill from my bag and laid it out in front of Zhang Qian. Seeing her face turn pale, Zhang Chang immediately scrambled down from his seat. Seeing the stark numbers on the bill, the two exchanged a panicked glance. They never expected that I would retrieve the phone from Chen Hui's body before his cremation. To be honest, I was somewhat relieved by Chen Hui's genuine feelings for Zhang Qian. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to unlock his phone using her birthday as the passcode. Even his mobile banking login password was her birthday. I effortlessly obtained evidence of Chen Hui transferring assets during the marriage. To get solid proof of his infidelity, I even printed out their flirtatious chat history. In those messages, Zhang Qian repeatedly asked him to delete the records. Chen Hui agreed verbally, but deep down, he couldn't bring himself to do it. As it turns out, this now makes it much easier for me to protect my rights. Zhang Qian's lawyer was sweating bullets, unable to string together a complete sentence. Meeting her furious gaze, he could only offer repeated apologies. He said he had done his best. The judge announced the verdict on the spot, ordering Zhang Qian to return all funds received. At those words, her anger boiled over into a blind rage. He actually tried to rush toward the judge. He was held back by the people nearby, but he kept shouting defiantly. He transferred that money voluntarily. Every single transaction was marked as a voluntary gift. Are you fucking blind? Why should I pay it back? He wanted to give it to me. You have no right to take it back for him. I played along with his little charade. This is what I deserve. Zhang Chang, with a sliver of sobriety left, held her back, his eyes churning with calculation. I sent the court victory documents to all our partners, and only then did they feel reassured. With the compensation secured, their previous hostility towards me vanished. To my surprise, they even began to show me sympathy, with quite a few offering words of comfort. After offering a brief word of thanks, I left the courthouse. I hired someone to tidy up the house, barely restoring it to its former state. I then contacted the factory Chen Hui had previously worked with and had them resume production. With 4 contracts, fulfilling the order for even one of them would be a good start. I have no idea where my mother-in-law heard the news, but she actually showed up at my house again. This time, she came alone. I thought that what little conscience she had left would make her feel some remorse, and that after seeing Zhang Qian's true colors, she'd come to apologize to me. But to my surprise, she barged in with a look of pure arrogance, plopped down on the sofa, and slammed a bank card down in front of me. Didn't you win the lawsuit? That's my son's hard-earned money. You owe me at least 80% of it. Just wire the money to my account, and I might let the matter of my son's death, which you caused, slide. Otherwise, I can't guarantee your future boyfriends won't find out about that abortion and what kind of woman you really are. Her shamelessness and greed had once again plumbed new depths, redefining the very limits of my understanding. All the money is going towards the penalty fee. You know that perfectly well. You're not getting a single cent. Hearing this, she slammed her hand on the coffee table with a thunderous crash right in front of me. Stop putting on an act for me. There's no way you didn't keep some for yourself. Give me at least half. I was so infuriated by her that I let out a bitter laugh on the spot. I took out my phone and showed her the call log from my recent conversation with the police. You should be going after Zhang Qian right now. She just bought a plane ticket and is about to flee. If she gets away, you won't see a single cent. My mother-in-law stared wide-eyed at the message on my phone, her eyes turning red. Without saying another word, she bolted out the door. An hour later, evidence of her and Chen Hui's plan to fake a death was posted online. It explicitly detailed how Zhang Chong, a doctor, violated his professional ethics to help his son fake his death, which tragically resulted in his son being cremated alive. As soon as the information was released, the police immediately came to investigate. The case escalated from a financial dispute to one of murder. The entire police force was mobilized to seal off all exits. With the heaviest deployment stationed at the airport, they were apprehended before Zhang Qian and her companion could board their flight. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, they were left utterly speechless. All that awaited them was a prison sentence. All funds remaining in Zhang Qian's account have been frozen. The portion transferred overseas is also being recovered. A week later, I finally received the full compensation. After transferring the money to several partners, I paid the factory the final installment. The quality is even better than what was specified in the original contract. The partner who had previously broken the contract saw the sample and immediately agreed to sign a new one with me. I've set up a small studio and am ready to start from scratch. My mother-in-law had heard the news and wanted to come ask for money, but the online backlash ended up dragging her into it as well. Past 50 and having endured a storm of online abuse, I can barely keep my own head above water now. Everything is moving in a positive direction. Perhaps, in some unseen way, it's my lost son watching over me. From now on, I'll live a good life on my own. End story 2. A cold, drizzling rain fell on the day of my father's funeral, dressed in black mourning clothes. I knelt before the altar, mechanically feeding paper money into the brazier. The flickering firelight played across my face, yet I felt no warmth from it. That was when Guju arrived. He wore an expensive tailored suit and carried no umbrella, letting the icy rain soak his handsome profile. He looked weary from travel, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he'd just torn himself away from an important meeting. He walked over to me, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over my shoulders, which were cold from kneeling for so long. Yao Yao, I'm sorry for your loss. His voice was as deep as ever, tinged with weariness. In the past, a moment of tenderness like this from him might have softened my heart, but now, my heart was colder and harder than the stone lions guarding the funeral hall. I didn't look at him, asking flatly, is she here too? Guju's body stiffened for a moment. The she I was referring to was Lin Wanwan, the unattainable love he had cherished in his heart for 7 years. She had returned to the country 3 days ago. Wanwan's health is delicate. She can't handle the cold. He dodged my question, a trace of barely perceptible irritation creeping into his voice. I laughed, the sound jarringly harsh in the hushed silence of the funeral hall. Yes, she's unwell and needs company. My father is dead, so I suppose I deserve to kneel here alone. I slowly rose to my feet and met his gaze. His eyes darted away, unable to meet mine. For 3 years of marriage, I played the dutiful housewife for him. I gave up my profession, my career, and dulled all my edges, all to be the meek, respectable Mrs. Gu standing quietly in his shadow. I used to believe that a person's heart could be warmed with enough patience. Up until 3 days ago, a single call from Lin Wanwan was all it took for him to drop everything and fly to her side. Yet today, at my father's funeral, he arrived late. Jiang Yao, we need to talk, he said, taking my hand. Talk about what? I asked. Calmly, he pulled a document from his jacket. The stark black print on white paper, with those bold words at the top, made my eyes sting. Divorce agreement. Yao Yao, I know this is cruel to bring up now, he said, frowning and putting on a pained expression, but Wanwan, she can't wait any longer. She needs to be made an honest woman. I looked at him, at this face I had loved for a full 10 years, and suddenly it felt utterly alien, utterly ridiculous. So, at my father's funeral, when I needed you most, you came not to comfort me, but to pressure me into a divorce, just to give your white moonlight her proper status, I asked, enunciating every word, my voice devoid of any emotion. Guju was left speechless by my question, In the end, he just said with a touch of defensive anger, "Jiang Yao, don't be like this. I know I've wronged you. I can compensate you with anything you want, except for the title, money, a house, shares, just name it." I took the divorce agreement and the pen he handed me. I didn't cry, and I didn't make a scene. I just looked at him and softly asked one final question. "Gu Ju, do you even remember what illness you had?" He froze. Of course he remembered. Dilated cardiomyopathy, a rare, inherited heart condition requiring lifelong medication. If he stopped the treatment, his heart would be like a balloon stretched to its limit, ready to burst at any moment. And the specific drug that could stabilize his condition, CML07, was developed by my father, who dedicated his entire life to its research. The patent belongs to the Jiang Group. It was the sole producer in the entire world. He looked at me, and a flicker of panic finally appeared in his eyes. I just smiled, lowering my head. I signed my name, Jiang Yao. At the bottom of the agreement, the handwriting was steady, without a single tremor. "I don't want anything," I said, handing him the agreement. "I have only one request. Let's make a clean break. No more ties between us." He took the agreement, seeming both relieved and somewhat lost. I turned and walked back to our home. No, to his home. I packed up my few belongings. Before leaving, I stepped into his bedroom. On the nightstand sat an elegant pillbox. Inside was a year's supply of his life-saving medication. Each pill was worth a fortune. Calmly, I opened the pillbox and poured out every last CML07 tablet, one by one, into a trash bag. Then, from my bag, I took out a bottle I had prepared long in advance, with identical packaging. Vitamin C. I carefully refilled the pillbox, one by one, with those small, round, white tablets. After finishing all of this, I took one last look at the place I had called home for 3 years. "Goodbye, Gu Ju. You traded me in for your one true love, so I'll give you this bottle of vitamins, and wish you a long, long life, too." The divorce papers at the funeral were my last shred of dignity. I left without telling a soul. Like a drop of water, I vanished silently into the sea of humanity. Gu Ju probably thought I'd act like every other scorned woman, weeping, clinging, hysterical, but he was wrong. The moment I signed that divorce agreement, the Jiang Yao who had loved him to the point of losing herself died along with my father. The one living now is Dr. Jiang Yao, the primary heir to the Jiang Group and the holder of the core patent for CML07. I didn't return to the Jiang family estate. Instead, I flew directly to Switzerland. My father has a secret, more advanced private laboratory there. On the plane, leaning against the window, I watched the clouds swirling below. For the first time, I calmly replayed the last 10 years between Gu Ju and me. We grew up together. My love for him was an open secret. It's not that he had no feelings for me, but whatever he felt became utterly fragile the moment Lin Wanwan appeared. Lin Wanwan was his junior at university. The pure, bright moonlight in his heart, delicate, kind, understanding. She fit every man's fantasy of a first love. Later, when Lin Wanwan went abroad, Gu Ju was heartbroken. It was around that same time he was diagnosed with a heart condition. I was the one who stood by him through his darkest days. It was my father who, for his sake, accelerated the development of CML07. After he recovered, he proposed to me. I thought I had finally weathered the storm and seen the sun. Looking back now, perhaps there was some genuine gratitude in his decision to marry me, but more than that, it was for the Jiang Group standing behind me, a corporation capable of providing him with lifetime after-sales service. I, Jiang Yao, a Stanford Ph.D. in biology, willingly reduced myself to a housewife concerned only with the mundane chores of daily life, all for him. I naively believed that if I gave enough, I could one day replace that perfect, unattainable memory in his heart. How pathetic. I turned off my phone and severed all ties back home in the Swiss laboratory. I buried myself in work, day and night. My father may have developed CML07, but this drug has a fatal flaw. It can only manage the condition, not cure it. Moreover, long-term use causes irreversible damage to the liver. Among my father's belongings, I discovered his unfinished research, a completely new, bolder concept, CML08. This is no longer a traditional drug, but a form of gene-targeted therapy. In theory, it can repair damaged myocardial cells at their root, achieving a true cure. This is the true future of the Jiang Group. This is the empire I, Jiang Yao, will build with my own hands. Gu Ju and his Huatai Group are nothing more than a bit of unfinished business I need to clear away before my plan begins. A month later, my assistant, a Swiss woman named Sophie, placed a report on my desk, a message from back home. "Mr. Jiang," she said succinctly. I opened the report. It read, "Gu Ju and Jiang Yao have officially divorced." Half a month after the divorce, Gu Ju publicly announced his engagement to Ms. Lin Wanwan, set for next month. Huatai Group's stock price experienced minor fluctuations as a result but quickly stabilized. Appearing before the media, a beaming Gu Ju declared he had finally found true happiness. At the end of the report, a photograph was attached. In the photo, Gu Ju and Lin Wanwan stood side by side, a perfect match. He was carefully shielding her, and the tenderness in his eyes was something I had never seen before. Sophie looked at me, concern in her eyes. Director Jiang, you. I closed the report, my face expressionless. It's fine, I said. Flatly, my heart was utterly still. In fact, I almost felt like laughing. Found true happiness. Have you, Gu Ju? You probably have no idea. Your so-called happiness is built on a pile of vitamin C, and that bottle of vitamins is quietly, day by day, pushing you toward the abyss. Your rebirth is merely the opening note of my symphony of revenge. Goodbye, Mr. Gu. I wish you a long, long life. Time is the most cunning hunter. It is silent and unseen, yet it steers everything toward its inevitable conclusion. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. During those 6 months, I completely vanished from everyone's world. Gu Ju probably thought I was hiding in some corner of the world, licking my wounds. He has no idea that these past 6 months have been the most productive and fulfilling period of my life. In a Swiss laboratory, I led a team of the world's top scientists and successfully completed all preclinical trials for CML08 on animal subjects. The experimental data was unbelievably perfect. This means we are just one final step away from truly conquering dilated cardiomyopathy. Human clinical trials. At the same time, I was making alternative plans using the funds my father left me. I registered a new biotechnology company in the Cayman Islands. The company's name is Krypton. Krypton, Superman's home planet, a being of such immense power, it borders on the divine. That's my ambition. I want to make Krypton the undisputed god of this industry, just as I was preparing to return home and initiate human clinical trials. Sophie sent me a new briefing. The engagement party for Gu Ju and Lin Wanwan has been postponed. The reason? I asked. It seems Gu Ju's health has taken a turn for the worse. Sophie's voice carried a hint of barely concealed excitement. According to internal sources at Huatai Group, he's been experiencing frequent episodes of palpitations, shortness of breath, and dizziness during meetings recently. Last week, he even fainted on the spot during a senior management meeting. I looked at the message that had popped up on my screen, calmly picked up my coffee, and took a sip. Right on schedule. Vitamin C is a wonderful thing, but it can't cure a heart condition. The bottle of medication I swapped out was supposed to last about a year. Half that time has passed now, so the active ingredient, CML07, in his system should be almost completely metabolized. His heart is gradually returning to that dangerous, uncontrolled state. Did he see a doctor? I asked. He did. He went to one of the top cardiology hospitals in the US, but the test results have left all the doctors baffled. Sophie said, all his metrics are deteriorating. They can't understand why his condition is still worsening when he's been consistently taking CML07. A cold smirk played at the corner of my mouth. Of course, they didn't understand, because no one in this world would ever suspect that the life-saving medication of a business titan, the master of $100 billion empire, could be stealthily swapped out for a bottle of vitamins costing a single dollar. Director Jiang, what's our next move? Sophie asked. Time to go home. I shut down the computer and stood up. It's time to go check on our clinical volunteer number 1. My plan is unfolding perfectly, just as scripted. Step 1. Create the crisis. Bring him crashing down from the clouds. Turn the body he was so proud of into his greatest source of fear. Step 2. Monopolize hope. Appear at his moment of deepest despair, bearing the one and only miracle drug that can save him. Only then will he understand what it was he gave up back then. Goodbye, Mr. Gu. Your days of ease are over. I sincerely wish you a long, long life. After all, only by staying alive can you watch, with your own eyes, as I take back everything that belongs to me, step by step. 4. His so-called rebirth is merely the beginning of my plan. Gu Ju has been quite irritable lately. After Jiang Yao left, he thought he was on the verge of a new life, freed from that woman's oppressive, ever-present love. He felt the very air was lighter. At last, he could openly bring Lin Wanwan to his side and give her the best the world had to offer. He announced their engagement with great fanfare, proclaiming his love for Wanwan to the world. He believed everything would unfold perfectly, just as he had imagined, but at some point, things began to slip from his control. It started with his body. At first, it was just an occasional, negligible flutter of panic. He thought he was just overworked and paid it no mind, but gradually, the situation grew worse. The palpitations, chest tightness, shortness of breath, all those symptoms he knew all too well came rushing back. He took his medication on time every day, Those special pills Jiang Yao had personally prepared for him, supposedly sourced directly from the Jiang group, but they were like ineffective candy, doing absolutely nothing. Last week, during the company's annual strategy meeting, he was on stage passionately outlining Huadai's future vision when everything suddenly went black, and he lost consciousness. When he came to, he was already in a hospital in the United States. A large group of top cardiologists stood around his hospital bed, their faces etched with deep concern. Mr. Gu, according to the test results, your myocardial function is continuing to deteriorate. This is highly unusual. In theory, CML07 should be effectively controlling your condition. What's the reason for that? He asked impatiently. We suspect you may have developed a resistance to CML07, the expert offered, presenting the only plausible explanation: drug resistance. Guju's heart sank. This meant his last lifeline had been severed. The physical abnormality also took a toll on his emotions and career. He grew irritable and suspicious. At work, the slightest mistake could send him into a rage. Conflicts between him and Lin Wanwan also began to arise frequently. Wanwan was lovely, but also fragile. What she needed was a strong, dependable partner who could be her shelter from the storm, not a temperamental patient who might collapse at any moment. She started complaining that he wasn't spending enough time with her. She began to cry, saying he didn't love her the way he used to. Guju felt a weariness unlike any he had known before. In the depths of certain restless nights, he would even find himself, uncontrollably, thinking of Jiang Yao. He thought of that woman, always so calm, so methodical. No matter how late he returned home, a light was always left on for him. No matter what minor ailment he suffered, she was always the first to notice and would arrange everything for him. He used to think it was only to be expected. Only now did I realize that constant sense of security had long since vanished. He had sent people to look for Jiang Yao, but all of his men seemed to have run into an invisible wall. That woman had vanished into thin air, no immigration records, no trace to be found. Just like that, she was completely erased from his world. He had no idea that his so-called rebirth was merely an insignificant prelude to Jiang Yao's grand scheme. He was even more oblivious to the vast net, woven from despair and hope, that was slowly tightening around him. He was the unsuspecting prey, caught right in the center of the web. 5. The first ineffective pill was a prelude to the death knell. The share price of Huatai Group began to exhibit an abnormal decline. Initially, it was just minor volatility, however, as rumors about President Gu Ju's concerning health condition spread like wildfire through the financial community, panic began to take hold. Gu Ju, pushing through his illness, held a press conference in an attempt to reassure the public. On camera, he looked haggard, with only a thick layer of foundation barely concealing the signs of his illness. All the speculation about my health is completely unfounded, he said to the camera with a slightly stiff smile. Huatai Group's operations are entirely normal. We have full confidence in the company's future. But the market tells the unvarnished truth. Even as he held the press conference, Huadai's stock price dropped another 5 points. After the meeting, he returned to his office and, unable to hold himself up any longer, collapsed into his chair. His personal physician stood by, waiting anxiously. Mr. Gu, the Jiang Group still refuses to budge, the doctor said, wiping sweat from his brow. They claim the ownership of CML07 was frozen after Miss Jiang Yao's disappearance. At present, they are unable to supply any more of the medication. Useless. Gu Ju swept the documents off the desk in one furious motion. The bottle of swapped-out medicine in his nightstand was nearly empty. It was his last psychological crutch, even though it had long since ceased to have any effect. What about the drug resistance? Is there any solution? He asked, gasping for breath. We've tried everything. Increasing the dosage, or combination therapy, but the results have been far from ideal, the doctor answered, trembling. Mr. Gu, from a medical standpoint, we are powerless unless we can find Miss Jiang Yao, or unless a new, effective drug emerges. A new, effective drug. Easier said than done. The development of a new drug, from the lab to the market, takes at least a decade and costs billions of dollars. Distant water cannot quench a fire right now. Guju waved his hand, dismissing the doctor. He sat alone in the vast, empty office. Outside the window, the city lights of countless homes glittered brilliantly, yet, he felt as if he were being slowly consumed by an endless, encroaching darkness. For the first time, he felt fear, that primal, most basic fear of death. He took out his phone and dialed a number that was once achingly familiar, yet one he hadn't touched since the divorce. Jiang Yao's number. He knew it was most likely a disconnected number, yet, clinging to a faint, almost laughable shred of hope, he dialed the phone. actually started ringing. BRRR, BRRR, BRRR. Each ringtone felt like a hammer blow, pounding against his heart just as he thought the call would ring out to voicemail. The other end picked up. Hello, a cool, calm, and achingly familiar voice came through the receiver. It's Jiang Yao. Gu Zhu's hand jerked violently, nearly dropping his phone. Yao Yao, is that you? Yao Yao, he stammered, overcome with emotion. Where are you? I've been looking for you everywhere. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Jiang Yao's voice came through again, as calm as ever, tinged with a polite detachment. You have the wrong number, Mr. Gu. No, I don't. Yao Yao, please, listen to me. I'm sorry, I don't know you. With that, the call was abruptly ended. Listening to the dial tone buzzing in the receiver, Gu Zhu felt as if he had been plunged into an icy abyss. He couldn't understand it. Why had things turned out this way? He had thought he was in complete control, but he had forgotten that first ineffective pill was already a rehearsal for the death knell, and now, the bell has tolled 6. He is searching for the past, while I have bought the future. Hanging up Gu Zhu's call, I felt not a single trace of extraneous emotion. This call was exactly as I had anticipated. In fact, it came a few days later than I had expected. President Jiang. Everything is ready. Sophie walked in and handed me a document for the World Health Summit being held in Shanghai in 3 days. We have secured a keynote speaker slot. I nodded and took the document. On the cover was our Krypton company logo, along with the name of the groundbreaking new product we were about to launch worldwide, CML08, the world's first gene-targeted curative therapy for dilated cardiomyopathy. Any movement on Gu Zhu's end? I asked casually. He's lost his mind. A smirk of schadenfreude played on Sophie's lips. He's thrown everything he has, every connection, every resource, into tracking your phone signal across the globe. But our tech team has already implemented countermeasures and a full signal blackout. All he'll ever find are the ghost signals we've planted for him, scattered across the world. He's like a headless fly, frantically chasing the past. What he doesn't realize is that you, sir, have already purchased the future. Sophie's voice was thick with admiration for me. I simply smiled. This is the devastating power of an information gap, a classic case of overwhelming superiority through asymmetric knowledge. He's still scrambling for a ticket on the sinking ship of the old world, while I've long since piloted my spaceship toward new galaxies. Oh, by the way, Mr. Jiang, Sophie added, as if remembering something, there's one more thing. The Huatai Group's board of shareholders has been mounting pressure recently. They have serious doubts about Gu Zhu's health and leadership capabilities. Rumor has it they've already started looking for a new CEO. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. Now that was a pleasant surprise. It seems I won't need to lift a finger. His business empire is about to crumble from within. How can a man who can't even manage his own health hope to manage a vast corporation? Let him stew a little longer, I said, closing the file. The more panicked he is, the greater the surprise we have in store for him in 3 days. 3 days later, Shanghai, the World Healthcare Summit. The venue was packed to capacity, filled with top medical experts, pharmaceutical giants, and deep-pocketed investors from around the globe. The entire audience was holding its breath. Today, a little-known new company called Krypton was set to unveil a technology rumored to be revolutionary enough to upend the entire field of cardiovascular disease treatment. Meanwhile, in a private hospital several hundred kilometers away, Gu Zhu lay in his hospital bed, watching the global livestream of the summit. His condition had worsened again. He had grown so weak that even getting out of bed had become a struggle. He wasn't watching the stream out of interest in any new technology. It was because, using the last of his connections, he had learned a piece of news that made his heart race. Jiang Yao might appear at this summit. He stared fixedly at the screen, like a traveler in the desert searching for water, unwilling to miss a single frame. Finally, the host announced in a voice trembling with excitement, "Now, let's give a thunderous round of applause as we welcome the founder and CEO of KRYP Ton to unveil this epic-making technology. Please welcome, Dr. Jiang Yao." The moment my image appeared on the screen, Gu Zhu's pupils contracted sharply. In the hospital room, the heart rate monitor emitted a piercing, frantic alarm. 7. Welcome to my press conference, Mr. Gu. Under the spotlight, I walked calmly onto the stage, wearing a well-tailored white suit with my long hair neatly tied back. Below me, a sea of 1,000 pairs of eyes, filled with scrutiny, curiosity, and anticipation. I scanned the room, my gaze steady and confident. Good afternoon, distinguished experts, honored guests. My voice, amplified by the microphone, carried clearly to every corner of the auditorium. My name is Jiang Yao, founder of Krypton. For decades, all our treatment approaches for dilated cardiomyopathy have been limited to management and delay. We use medication to control its progression, But this is like a war with no end in sight. Patients require lifelong medication, and pharmaceutical companies reap the endless dividends from this. My words hit home, visibly unsettling many of the pharmaceutical titans in the audience. But today, I'm here to tell you all, this war must end. A sleek 3D molecular structure model appeared on the large screen behind me. After years of research, Krypton Corporation has successfully developed the world's first gene-targeted therapy for dilated cardiomyopathy, CML08. It's no longer about maintenance, it's about a cure. The word cure exploded like a bombshell in the conference hall. The entire room erupted in an uproar. Impossible. Gene therapy, that's way ahead of its time. Is she out of her mind? How dare she say something like that on such an important occasion? Voices of doubt and murmurs of discussion rose and fell in waves. I paid no heed, and simply pressed the button on my clicker with calm composure. On the large screen, data, imagery, and comparative charts from the animal trials began to play. The subjects ranged from lab mice, to beagles, and finally to rhesus macaques, whose genetics are most similar to humans. Every single data point was flawless, beyond reproach. Following a single injection of CML08, the test subjects' damaged cardiomyocytes began significant self-repair within 4 weeks. After 8 weeks, cardiac function recovered to over 95% of healthy levels. By 12 weeks, recovery was complete. To date, there has not been a single case of relapse. I delivered my report calmly, using cold, objective, and irrefutable data to address every point of skepticism. The auditorium gradually fell silent. The leading experts stared at the miraculous experimental data on the screen, their expressions shifting from skepticism to shock, and then to fervor. They knew that if all of this was true, then today, they would bear witness to the dawn of a new era. An era defined by gene therapy has arrived. Meanwhile, in a hospital room, Guju clutched the bedsheet with a white-knuckled grip, the veins on the back of his hand standing out as he watched the confident, radiant woman on the screen, a woman who seemed to glow. He felt an invisible hand clench around his heart. Is this really Jiang Yao? The same woman who used to follow him around, meek and submissive, speaking in nothing more than a timid whisper? Is this the same woman he thought couldn't survive without him? No, the woman on the screen was a goddess he had never seen before, utterly, completely unfamiliar, a cold, indifferent deity, holding in hand the oracle that could decree his life or death. At the end of the press conference, I turned to the camera and offered a composed, business-like smile. CML08 is projected to officially commence its first global phase of human clinical trials in 3 months. At that time, we will recruit 30 qualified volunteers from around the world. We welcome all patients afflicted by this disease to follow our official website and actively apply. I paused, my gaze seeming to pierce through the screen, fixing directly on the man lying in the hospital bed. Krypton's mission is to provide the ultimate solution for human health. My medicine exists solely to save those who are truly in need. Welcome to my product launch, Mr. Gu. Your despair is my finest. Stage 8, beg me. Let's discuss your market value first. Krypton's product launch sent shockwaves around the globe. Major media outlets splashed headlines, feverishly covering this groundbreaking technology. Wall Street capital, like sharks scenting blood, swarmed in, waving checkbooks, desperate to secure a stake in Krypton. Overnight, the name Jiang Yao was transformed from a discarded wife of a wealthy family into a godlike, red-hot sensation in the global biotech field. In stark contrast stood the Huatai Group. The day after the Krypton press conference, Huatai's stock price plummeted. Its market value evaporated by nearly 100 billion in a single day. CML07, the former cash cow that had brought endless glory to the Jiang Group and served as the core pillar of Huatai's health industry division, instantly became worthless junk in the face of the cure concept presented by CML08. How can a drug that merely manages a condition be compared to one that offers a complete cure? The first shocking crack appeared in Guju's commercial empire. His health, much like his company's stock price, was teetering on the brink. He tried every means possible to get in touch with me. He had people stationed outside the Krypton China branch office. He tried every connection he had to get my private contact information. He even had Lin Wanwan apply for a clinical trial slot on the Krypton website, posing as a regular patient. But every single attempt vanished without a trace. I have no desire to see him. It wasn't until a week later that the board of directors of Huatai Group extended a formal invitation for a business meeting to me. I knew he had run out of tricks. This was the only way left for him. The most official, the most proper, and yet the most humbling way, to beg for an audience with me. The meeting was arranged at a private club on the banks of the Huangpu River. When I arrived, Guju was already there. He was sitting in a wheelchair, a thin blanket draped over him. After just a fortnight apart, He was gaunt and hollow-cheeked, his eyes sunken, his face as pale as paper. The once vibrant and domineering Mr. Gu was now just a fragile patient, dependent on machines to sustain his life. Behind him stood Lin Wanwan. She was wearing a white dress, her eyes rimmed red. The look she gave me was filled with complex emotions, pleading, jealousy, and a trace of fear. Yao Yao, Gu Ju rasped upon seeing me, struggling to stand up. Mr. Gu, I cut him off calmly, taking a seat directly on the sofa opposite him. I believe we are here today as representatives of Huatai Group and KRYP Tun to discuss business. Personal terms of address are not appropriate. My aloofness was like a bucket of ice water, dousing every last bit of his emotion. A bleak, pained smile, more of a grimace, really, spread across his face. All right, Mr. Jiang. The words were forced out with difficulty. Mr. Jiang, I know, I wronged you in the past. I was a bastard. I'm willing to do anything to make it right. Just give me one of the CML08 clinical trial slots. He had prostrated himself completely. I didn't even look at him. Instead, I took a document from my assistant and slid it across the table toward him. Mr. Gu, before we get into personal matters, perhaps we should discuss business first. This is a patent infringement lawsuit filed by our company's legal team against Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals, a subsidiary of Huatai Group. What? Guju was stunned. The core patent for CML07 has always been held in my father's, Professor Jiang Hua's, personal name. Upon his passing, I inherited it personally. 3 years ago, when I married you, I signed a patent licensing agreement that permitted Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals to produce and sell CML07 under the condition of paying patent royalties. I paused, watching his face grow paler, and continued. However, according to our investigation, after my father's passing and my divorce, Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals continued to produce and sell CML07 without my personal authorization. Moreover, they have been in arrears on the patent royalties for a full 6 months, totaling 784 million. Legally, this constitutes severe patent infringement and breach of contract. So, Mr. Gu, I leaned forward slightly, looking into his eyes, widened with shock and frailty, and asked, enunciating each word, before you beg me to save your life, shouldn't you first pay back the money you owe me? Guju was utterly dumbfounded. It had never crossed his mind that Jiang Yao would bring this up with him. Money, the law, contracts, everything but their feelings. You, he pointed at me, trembling with rage. A sudden fit of coughing seized him as he struggled to catch his breath. Lin Wanwan hurried over and began patting his back to soothe him. I watched the scene coldly, picked up the teacup from the table, and took a small, deliberate sip. Beg me, fine. First, let's see how much market value you and your Huatai Group have left. 9. My medicine only saves those who are worth saving. The negotiations that day ended on a sour note. Guju was so enraged by my payment demand that he had a heart attack on the spot and was rushed back to the hospital. Lin Wanwan stopped me just before she left. Miss Jiang, she said, biting her lip, her eyes red, I know you hate him, but this is a matter of life and death. Can you really stand by and do nothing? I looked at her face, tear-stained and pitiful. 6 months ago, I might have been jealous of her, maybe even hated her, but now, in my eyes, she's just a pitiful woman. She had staked her entire world on one man. When that man fell, her world came crashing down. Miss Lin, I replied calmly, firstly, I am not a doctor, I am a businessman, and a businessman does not make deals at a loss. Second, I said, my gaze cold and devoid of any warmth as I looked at her. Every day, countless people die in this world for all sorts of reasons. My medicine is expensive, and the supply is limited. It will only be used to save those who are worth saving. As for whether Guju is worth it, that depends entirely on what price he's willing to pay. With that, I stepped around her and walked away without a backward glance. Of course, I wasn't actually going to stand by and let someone die. Guju, you can't die yet. If he dies, who's going to pay me back that 700 million in patent fees? If he's gone, who am I supposed to get to take over that massive pie that is Huatai Group? He has to stay alive to live in agony, regret, and utter helplessness, to live long enough to hand over everything he ever owned, with his own hands, just for a chance to keep on living. In the following days, Huatai Group was plunged into unprecedented chaos. CEO in critical condition, company faces massive patent lawsuit. Negative news kept piling up. One after another, the stock price plummeted. The board of directors has formally issued an ultimatum to Guju. If he cannot resolve the Krypton patent issue and stabilize his health condition within 1 week, They will initiate removal proceedings. Guju was backed into a corner. In the end, he capitulated. The CFO of Huatai Group contacted us. They expressed willingness to immediately pay all outstanding patent fees and hope to commence a new round of negotiations regarding the CML08 collaboration. This time, Guju was not in attendance. In his place was the vice president of Huatai, a sharp and efficient-looking middle-aged man, President Jiang. He got straight to the point. We acknowledge that our handling of the CML07 patent issue was improper. We are prepared to pay compensation. Furthermore, regarding CML08, we hope to establish a deep strategic partnership with Krypton Inc. through an equity swap arrangement. His words were all very high-sounding, but I knew what it really meant. We want to trade you our worthless Huatai shares for the golden goose you're holding. I laughed. Mr. Zhang. I leaned back in my chair and looked at him. I think you may have misunderstood the current situation. Right now, it's not for you at Huatai to decide whether or not to work with me. Rather, it's me, Jiang Yao, who is considering whether or not to give your company a chance to survive. You, Vice President. Zhang's face flushed crimson in an instant. Don't get worked up. I waved my hand dismissively, my tone as casual as if discussing the weather. I'm giving you two options. A. I, in my personal capacity, am offering to acquire all shares of Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals under your Huatai Group, along with its entire production lines and sales channels. In return, I can secure a spot in a clinical trial for Guju. B. I refuse. You can wait to be sued, then watch Guju die, Huatai descend into chaos without leadership, its stock price crash, and finally, get torn to pieces by other capital. I looked at him and offered a benign smile. Director Zhang, you, and the board behind you, can take your time to consider it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, my clinical trial is starting next week. There's only one spot left, 10, so, in the end, love is the cheapest luxury. The Huatai board of directors didn't keep me waiting long when faced with corporate bankruptcy or cutting its losses to survive. Capital always makes the most rational choice with swift decisiveness. 3 days later, the agreement was signed. I, Jiang Yao, repurchased Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals, which was rightfully mine all along, from the Huatai Group at a price so low it felt insulting. My father's life's work was finally, completely, back in my hands, and so, Guju got his wish, securing the final spot in the clinical trial. He was admitted to a private hospital under the Krypton Corporation. There, he would undergo a 3-month course of CML08 treatment. When I went to the hospital to see him, he had just received his first injection. He lay in the hospital bed, and force still in his arm, perhaps due to the medication. His complexion looked a bit better than before, though he remained weak. The room was empty. Lin Wanwan wasn't there. She's gone, Guju murmured, his gaze fixed on the ceiling, his voice hoarse as if talking to himself. I responded, which served as my answer. The very next day after I signed that equity transfer agreement, he laughed, a smile full of self-mockery. She left me a letter. She said she loved the healthy, capable Guju, not the current wreck who has to rely on a woman's charity just to survive. She also said she was sorry. Then, she flew back to Canada. I listened quietly, saying nothing. I saw this ending coming from a mile away. A woman like Lin Wanwan is like a daughter vine in a greenhouse. She can only survive by clinging to a tall, sturdy tree. When that tree falls, she won't hesitate to seek out the next one to latch onto. This isn't about right or wrong, it's just instinct. Yao Yao. Guju turned his head to look at me. In his eyes, once so full of ambition and spirit, now there was nothing but endless regret and pleading. Am I a fool? Am I pathetic? For her, for a woman who only loved my status, I gave up you. The one person who truly loved me. I was wrong, Yao Yao. I know I was wrong. Give me another chance, please. We can start over. He struggled, trying to reach for my hand. I took a step back, avoiding his touch. I looked at him, at this man I had loved for 10 years and hated for half a year. In that moment, I realized, to my surprise, that there was no more hatred left in my heart. Not even a trace of vindictive pleasure remained. All that was left was a desolate, tranquil void. It was like looking at a complete stranger, someone who had nothing to do with me. Guju, I began calmly. Do you know what love is? He was stunned. I used to think it was everything, the air I breathe, the water I drink, the very reason to live, but now, I finally understand, I said to him, enunciating each word clearly. Love, it turns out to be the most expensive, yet the cheapest, luxury in this world. It's expensive because it demands your sincerity, your time, and your trust in exchange. These are things money can't buy. And it's cheap because, I smiled, a smile tinged with pity, when your life, your career, Everything you have is on the verge of collapse, you'll find it's utterly worthless, it can't save your life, nor can it fill your stomach, Guju, you and I are long over. It ended the moment you showed up at my father's funeral with that divorce agreement. Now, what remains between us is purely, and solely, a business relationship. You are my clinical subject number one. I'm saving your life to collect the most valuable clinical data, and I am your creditor. Your Huatai group still owes me a debt, one that can never be repaid. With that, I turned away without another glance and walked out of the hospital room outside. The sunlight was warm and bright. The man I left behind, along with his cheap, hollow love, would be sealed away forever in that cold, sterile room 11, your empire, my hunting ground under the treatment of CML08. Guju's health improved day by day. Meanwhile, his Huatai group was being eroded step by step, sliding into decline with each passing day. The first thing I did after reclaiming Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals was to announce the permanent discontinuation of CML07. This news detonated like a depth charge, sending massive waves of panic through the global community of heart disease patients. This meant that for patients who had relied on CML07 to sustain their lives, their lifeline had been severed, and I, after having created this panic, immediately called for a second press conference. I hereby announce that Krypton Corporation's CML08, having successfully passed its Phase 1 clinical trials with flawless results, will now enter the fast-track approval process. It is expected to be available on the market within 6 months. Furthermore, I have disclosed the preliminary pricing for CML08, a price tag so astronomical, it's enough to drive anyone wild. By utilizing Guju, our subject number one, I have flawlessly demonstrated the efficacy of my product to the entire world. Then, by leveraging the discontinuation of CML07 and the exorbitant price of CML08, we created a massive market vacuum. Everyone knows that CML08 is a miracle drug, but not everyone can afford it, and that is the third step of my plan: reap the harvest. On behalf of Krypton, I have extended an olive branch to major insurance companies and national healthcare agencies worldwide. I have introduced a tiered cooperation plan, provided they include CML08 in their medical insurance reimbursement lists. Krypton will offer them varying degrees of price discounts and technical support. This is an overt scheme that no one can refuse. Insurance companies need this miracle drug to attract more high-end clients. The national healthcare system needs this miracle drug to address a massive social healthcare burden. By aligning with them, I firmly embedded Krypton's commercial footprint into the global healthcare system. My Krypton was no longer just a pharmaceutical company. It had transformed into a platform that set the rules of the game. Meanwhile, the Huatai Group, once a commercial titan, was completely marginalized in this industrial upgrade that I spearheaded. It lost its core technology, its market share, and its future. All that remained was a hollow shell and a mountain of non-performing assets. I went to pick Guju up on the day he was discharged from the hospital. He looked no different from anyone else. In fact, he seemed even more energetic than before his illness. CML08 achieved a medical miracle in him. He stood at the hospital entrance, watching my car pull up, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Don't mention it," I replied mechanically. "It was part of the deal. Your recovery data is flawless and has been invaluable for our Phase 2 clinical trial." He gave a bitter smile. "So, where are you headed next?" I asked. "Back to the company," he said. "Which company?" I looked at him and asked coolly. "Huatai doesn't need you anymore. Just 1 hour before you were discharged, the Huatai board formally approved my acquisition proposal." Guju's body jolted violently. "What did you say?" I said. I repeated calmly. "As of today, Huatai Group is officially a wholly owned subsidiary of Krypton. Your office, your employees, your empire, they all belong to me now. And as for you, Mr. Guju," I said, looking at his face, pale with shock, and allowing a smile to form, "you're fired." I turned the empire he built with his own hands into my personal hunting ground, and he, that once mighty lion, is now merely the most insignificant of my many trophies. 12. Your white moonlight, just the final speck of dust that broke you. Guju was left with absolutely nothing. In the truest sense of the word, he was evicted from Huatai Tower, and all assets under his name were seized to settle his debts. He had fallen from grace, completely and utterly. I stopped following any news about him. To me, he had lost all his usefulness. I was busy consolidating Huatai's resources and spearheading Krypton's global expansion. I became a cover story for major business magazines, the goddess in the eyes of countless entrepreneurs. I had reached the position he once held, and even surpassed it. Then one day, Sophie told me that Guju had come to the company looking for me. He had waited at the reception desk the entire day. It was only after I finished the work at hand that I remembered the whole thing. I met him in the company cafeteria. He was wearing an old, faded suit, his hair was a bit disheveled, and the sharpness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion and confusion. "What's this about?" I got straight to the point. He reached into his jacket and produced a small velvet box, sliding it across the table toward me. "This was left to me by my mother," she said. "It was for the Gu family's daughter-in-law." He kept his head down, unable to meet my eyes. I forgot to give it to you before. Now, it's finally going to its rightful owner." I opened the box. Inside lay a beautiful jade bracelet. It was a vibrant, uniform emerald green, with a flawless, translucent clarity. I stared at the bracelet and fell silent. "Jiang Yao." He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "I know, I have nothing left now. I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I just can't understand. How did we end up here? Is it because of Wan Wan?" he asked, as if to me, or perhaps to himself. If she hadn't been there, would we still be like this?" I looked at him and suddenly felt a pang of pity. Even now, he's still making excuses for his own failure. "Guju." I gently pushed the bracelet back toward him. "You're wrong. The end between you and me has nothing to do with Lin Wan Wan. Even if it weren't her, there would have been a Li Wan Wan, a Zhang Wan Wan. Because in your heart, I was never your lover, your partner. I was just a functional presence, someone to take care of you when you were sick, a supplier who could provide you with the special medicine you needed. All your kindness toward me was built on the foundation of you needing me. The day you feel you no longer need me, or when another need arises, you would abandon me without a second thought. Lin Wan Wan, she is not the problem between us." I looked at him and, word by deliberate word, spoke the cruelest truth. "She isn't even the straw that broke the camel's back. She is merely the final, insignificant speck of dust that drifted down onto your already crumbling edifice. It wasn't anyone else who destroyed you. It was you, Guju, your arrogance, your selfishness, and that pitiful, worthless sense of superiority of yours." Guju's face instantly drained of all color. Every word I spoke was like a knife, slicing through the last shred of self-deception he clung to. 13. Consider this acquisition agreement my final act of mercy. Guju was gone. He did not take the bracelet with him. As if the last of his strength had been drained, he vanished into the crowd, utterly broken. I thought that was the end of our story, that a period should be placed right here, but I never expected to hear from him again. Just a few days later, and in a way I could never have imagined, he returned to Jiangshi Pharmaceuticals. No, to be precise, it was the pharmaceutical factory of the Krypton Group. He hadn't returned as the CEO, but rather, as a bottom-rung assembly line worker. His job was to apply labels to the packaging boxes for CML08. It was Sophie who spotted him during her inspection tour of the factory. "It seems like he's having some mental issues," Sophie said, her tone complicated. "He doesn't cry, doesn't make a fuss, doesn't speak. He just sits there, every day, from 8 in the morning until 8 at night, putting on labels, non-stop. When we try to pay him, he refuses. If you give him food, he eats it, and when it's time to clock out, he just goes back alone to that tiny staff dormitory in the corner of the factory." After hearing this, I fell silent for a long time. I don't know why he's doing this. Is it atonement, penance, or is it some kind of alternative, self-destructive form of punishment? I went to the factory. Through the huge glass window, I saw him dressed in blue work clothes, with a cap and a mask. He was indistinguishable from the hundreds of other workers. He sat by the assembly line, his back hunched, his eyes vacant. His movements were mechanical, numb. He would pick up a box, slap on a label, and place it on the conveyor belt over and over again, as if he were destined to do this until the end of time. Watching him, my heart, long hardened to iron, felt, for the first time, an imperceptible, faint softening. Do I really hate him that much, enough to watch him waste the rest of his life in such a way? Suddenly, I remembered, many years ago, it was in my father's laboratory that I first saw him. He was just a boy, wearing a white shirt, standing in the sunlight. When he smiled, it was as if there were stars in his eyes. Back then, I thought he was my whole world. It turns out, in the blink of an eye, so many years have already passed. I turned and said to Sophie beside me, "Process his resignation paperwork." And then, Sophie asked. I thought for a moment and said, "In the company's name, set up a trust fund for him in Switzerland, to ensure he's taken care of for the rest of his life. Then, send him abroad, and make sure he never, ever comes back." Sophie was taken aback for a second, then nodded. "Mr. Jiang, what is this?" "This is my final act of mercy towards him," I whispered. "I Took the empire he had built with his own hands and made it mine. I trampled everything he had ever been proud of beneath my feet. Now, I will strip away even his last shred of hope for atonement. I will have him spend the rest of his life in a vast, eternal void of material comfort every single day. He will feel with perfect clarity exactly what he has lost. That, perhaps, is the cruelest punishment of all for him. The trust agreement I signed is just like the divorce papers he handed me all those years ago, but this time, it's different. I am the one who holds the power of life and death. I am the god. 14. I saved your life. What will you give me in return? Guju was taken away. I visited a beautiful Swiss town, far from the hustle and bustle. I never heard from him again. He vanished without a trace, like a stone dropped into the ocean. Meanwhile, my Krypton empire entered a golden age of rapid development. Following its global launch, CML-08 achieved unprecedented success. Not only did it generate immense profits for the company, but more importantly, it fundamentally transformed humanity's fight against heart disease. I, Jiang Yao, became the legend of this era. A flood of honors and accolades came pouring in. I graced the cover of Time magazine, hailed as the greatest scientist and entrepreneur of the century. I stand at the summit of the world, basking in all that victory brings, but I don't know why in those quiet, late-night moments, I sometimes feel a trace of emptiness, that kind of emptiness that comes after achieving all your goals, when you suddenly lose your sense of direction. Sophie noticed the change in me. Jiang, she said one day, handing me a cup of coffee and asking as if it were nothing, are you happy? I was stunned. Happy? This is a question I haven't pondered in a very long time. I got my revenge. I reclaimed everything that was mine. I built a business empire beyond compare. I should be happy, but then why does it feel like there's a piece missing from my heart? I don't know, I answered honestly. Sophie smiled and pulled up a document on her tablet. Perhaps this will help you find a new purpose. It was a request for medical aid from a country in Africa. This country has the highest incidence of dilated cardiomyopathy in the world, yet, because of poverty, its people simply cannot afford our CML-08. Their government hopes to collaborate with us, introducing our technology through a resource exchange arrangement. I looked at the documents, at those dark faces contorted in suffering from the disease. I looked at those children, condemned by poverty to simply wait for death. Deep within me, in a corner of my heart long grown still, something seemed to stir, ever so gently. I once believed that everything I did was for revenge, but now, I suddenly realized there might be another possibility. I am a scientist. A scientist's mission is to explore the unknown and to change the world rather than dwelling on past grievances. Reply to them, I said to Sophie, closing the file. Krypton will establish a global health foundation. The first round of aid will be sent here. Furthermore, I stood up, walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down at the bustling city below. I will personally donate another $1 billion for global research into rare diseases. I saved Guju's life. He offered his entire empire in exchange. Now, I want to use my medicine to save more lives, but what they required in return was neither money nor an empire. It was to help me rediscover a reason to live, not as an avenger, but as a human being. 15. After the crematorium, only the ashes of a career remain. Several years later, at a world-class charity gala in Geneva, as the founder of the Global Health Foundation, I delivered the keynote address. After the speech, I stepped out onto the terrace with a glass of champagne. Needing a breath of fresh air, a man stood in the corner of the terrace. He was dressed in a well-tailored tuxedo, his hair impeccably groomed, and he was gazing quietly at the distant Lake Geneva. Hearing the footsteps, he turned around. Their eyes met. It was Guju. He looked completely different from the man he was a few years ago. Gone was the sickly pallor and the air of dejection. His gaze was calm and gentle, like a lake smoothed by the passage of time. Long time no see, he said with a gentle smile, speaking first. Long time no see, I nodded, stepping forward to stand by his side. How have you been? He asked. I've been well, I said. And you? It's good too, he said with a smile. I found a job here in this little town. I'm a librarian at the community library. Every day, I tidy up the books and tell stories to the children. It's peaceful. It's fulfilling. I looked at him, a little surprised. I thought he would be trapped in the shadows of his past forever. I never imagined he would find a new life for himself. Thank you, he said suddenly. For what? For not letting me die, all those years ago, he said softly, gazing into the distance, and for finally sending me here, for giving me the chance to live a completely different life. Only now do I understand how laughable the things I used to chase really were, those empires, that control. In the end, a person doesn't need all that much in this life. I listened in silence. The evening breeze lifted my long hair. In the distance, the church bells began to ring, their sound clear and melodious. Neither Eva spoke another word. I know that at this moment, with this evening breeze, all the grudges and entanglements between us have vanished into thin air. There is no forgiveness, nor is any needed. It's simply letting go. He has let go of his obsession, and I, too, have let go of my hatred. That crematorium built for him, which once blazed with raging flames, has finally been extinguished. The firelight has faded. Love and hatred turned to ash. All that remains is the vast, composed, and ever advancing landscape of my enterprise. I raised my glass to the distant sea of city lights and offered a quiet, gentle toast to the self I once loved, once hated, and that has finally been laid to rest, and to this brand new, vibrant future, one I built with my own two hands. The end.